All right, I think. Yep, it's thinking, it's thinking, it's thinking. Oh boy, it's taking a while this morning. Probably because I need to update my computer.
I think we'll have to push OK as well.
Yeah.
I think
I'm
we're
showing
going.
that we're streaming. Yeah, I think we're going.
Oh yeah, we're live. Woo!
We're live. That was the awkward, like, can you hear?
Are we
Can you hear
live?
me now?
Can you hear me
Can
now?
you hear me now? Here we are. We're going to talk about AI and the future of technology, and we're like, are we streaming?
Are we streaming? Well, we're super excited to see Nanook of the North. In case you don't recognize him, that is Josh. We haven't.
Hey, if you're in Canada, you got to grow a beard and you got to drink Tim Hortons coffee.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just out for a rip this morning after my morning cig, and this guy came by and he's just like, hey, you want to have a tilly bud? And I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm going to head over to Tim's, just grab a quick one real fast there.
Did you just speak English?
Exactly. It's weird being back up here. It makes me talk weird too. Makes you grow a beard. Makes you talk weird. Sig, and this guy came by and he's.
You're too funny.
All right, let's talk about hockey.
Let's not talk about hockey. So, Josh, tell us about your alternate reality experience yesterday.
Hey, so everyone knows that we're on technological advancement, like hyperdrive right now. We're in the digital era, or we could call it the tech era or the data era, whatever you want to call it, but it's all related. And I think that as a little bit of a parallel, it's an important commentary that if you look at the advancements of the yugas and that sort of the yugas, the different era, like Kali Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, these are the larger philosophical like cycle of reality and consciousness that we go through that yoga follows.
Those
we're on an ascension path, and the next phase that we're moving into is hyper intelligence. And so it's actually very fitting. It makes sense that we're growing technologically right now as a primary focus. But from that perspective, I think yesterday I took my daughter to an Apple store and I did the demo for about 30 minutes of the Apple Vision Pro, the goggles that you wear. And I've tried some VR headsets and stuff, and I had thought it was going to be like, this will be an interesting new thing that's novel to play with. And I was interested because I'm like, well, if I have this and I can work, maybe I don't need multiple screens for my computer and stuff. I was blown away. It was way more immersive, like so immersive that as an intelligent entrepreneur, I would suggest everyone go and do a demo of these things to understand what this is like. Not because you should buy one, not because you're going to do anything with it in your business today, but like this is coming, and it's coming way faster than people think. I think that this is reminiscent of like how, the iPod came out and in 18 months basically nullified CDs. And then the iPhone came out and it nullified BlackBerry in 10 months, bankrupt them. So I don't think this will have the same adoption that way, but I do think that it will have that level, like it's speed-wise that is, but it will have that level of adoption. My kids, Carol's kid, like this will be how they interact. And it's a real mind twist, but here's the specific thing as a yogapreneur to consider. They have a thing called, like, it's a more spatial reality. So they have what they call an immersive experience, which requires a special type of recording even. But when you're in an immersive experience with these things on, you literally lose track of where you are. You don't believe, I'm sitting in the Apple store and I forgot that I was in the Apple store for 30 seconds.
So now this is like Orwellian. This is like kind of like
it is.
Again, Matrix, red pill, blue pill kind of thing. And I don't know, I guess for me, it's just, I get the hairs on the back of my neck kind of stand up kind of thing. It's like, if you already struggle with what is reality and then you throw this in here, it's like all of a sudden what can you trust, I guess? What anchors you? I mean, and then how would you see that? How could we extrapolate that to, like you said, to use it in your business? Would it be to, I don't know, create content of a yoga class that people could plug into at home? I don't know. Is it going to take like live,
Well,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
I just can't, my brain is like, hey, I've got a boomer brain. So my boomer brain is struggling to wrap its mind around all this stuff.
yeah. The couple of direct applications that like could theoretically happen today, but I feel like will be the first versions of where this appears in a yoga studio is this changes the idea of VOD and it changes the idea of live stream.
Yeah.
Because when you're wearing this thing, like you can set different like not just backgrounds like a computer, you can set different scenes that you literally feel like you're in. And when I say feel like you're in, I mean you set that you're in Grand Teton National Park and you're looking at the Teton Mountains. And if you turn your body 360 degrees, it just keeps going as if you're literally standing there. So now imagine that, but you're in a yoga class, that's your yoga studio. And so in theory, if it's that good, like I literally, like my brain doesn't know the difference. You actually think that you're in the yoga class now. Now you know that you're not. Is it going to be better than a real in-person yoga class still? No, I don't think that it will supplement that completely, but it's not just like, you know, twice as good as just watching it on your TV. We're talking about a completely different type of experience. So suddenly virtualized yoga is like much more realistic as a product.
Well, okay, so taking that, would you then, how would you film classes and like people would subscribe and have to have one of these things and it would be like, or would you just still like record your existing classes? I guess that's the thing. And then you could have these classes that people would, I guess, subscribe to like a VOD thing. But then if you have this gadget, this piece of equipment, it would enhance it even more. And maybe the yoga studio like rents those. Carol.
I was just listening to a podcast completely unrelated to yoga, but he was talking about how AI is now getting really good at creating video. Like you
Yeah.
can, again, we're prompting it for, using it for our newsletters and things like that. But there's this thing that basically he was a movie and TV producer, and he's like, it's really crazy that you could have like a scene with young Harrison Ford doing all these things, and it looks so real that, I almost feel like you could, like you don't even have to film anything. You're putting it into AI to create. I mean, that's where I'm thinking. I don't know. I don't know.
That just reminded me of one
Yeah.
of the things we talked about. So last week, Carol and I did the roundup, and there was a tech, probably human error, and it didn't get recorded. But it was a great roundup. Either that or it's somewhere on this, it's in ether going out to Mars or something like that. We were talking about that because I had mentioned that the previous weekend, so basically 2 weeks ago, I went and saw Alien Romulus, which
Right.
is, if you're, I mean, it was fabulous. I am a big sci-fi alien fan. And for those of you, it's like, it takes place, the timeline is in terms of the alien universe, it takes place in the timeline between Alien and Aliens. So, and because we were talking about what you were saying with the AI and stuff in the movies. So those of you who saw the original movie, the artificial person, I can't think of his name right now, but was played by the actor Ian Holm. Now, obviously, the original movie came out 45 years ago. I still remember going to see it when I was in high school. And so subsequently, we're 45 years later, and also Ian Holm passed away in 2020. But yet, Ash, that was the character's name, Ash. But yet, Ash is in Alien Romulus. Right. And it's like, they had to use like AI and stuff like that. And then we had the conversation as, well, I wonder if they had to get permission from his estate. And this kind of goes into, like you were just saying, Carol, using like Harrison Ford from the past. And I know I've been reading some articles about that in terms of that intellectual property and people doing that, and the artists, that's a big concern about the artists not getting compensated and all that kind of stuff. But that is really mind-blowing. And yeah, it's just this is like Alex Huxley, A Brave New World. This is George Orwell, it is all of those guys coming to pass. It's so bizarre.
Well, here's the other thought too. This is why this is more impactful than I think people at first glance. It's not just that it's like, this is interesting or it's Orwellian. It's Orwellian in the way that this changes culture. So the best example of this, which sounds like a tangent, but it's not, are the legal contracts that the pro wrestlers in the WWE have to sign. So if you're part of the WWE, McMahon makes them sign these contracts where he basically owns them because of the character they are for their whole life, no matter what they do. So even like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or John Cena now, when they end up in a movie, proceeds go to the WWE. They don't get all the money because the reason they're big is the WWE, quote, made them. And so now consider that will extend outside of you as a human. It will extend to be your name, how you look, how you sound, even if it's not you or even if you're dead.
Yeah.
And so it's going to change contract and employment situations like already is.
Well, yeah, intellectual property.
Yeah.
This is that whole thing of intellectual property, because I've seen there's like content creators on like YouTube where there's all these ones floating out there. And it's always to the song Forever Young. They're always playing Forever Young. And it shows like Harrison Ford currently like interacting with like his arm around Harrison Ford's younger self. And it is just so bizarre to see that. It's like, and it looks, you can tell it's AI, but I guarantee you in a couple of more years, you're not going to be able to tell.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's sort of really, and so, yeah, how can you use that in your business? That's the thing. Because I mean, I can see this coming into business for sure.
Oh, it will immediately. And I think that, where attention goes, money flows. So there's a lot of attention on all this stuff. So money's flowing towards it, but the attention won't go away from this because it'll just keep getting better. But what I would say is the more practical sense, like, so there's the yoga class sort of situation. There's the augmented reality theoretical situation. Augmented being like, you can wear this thing and then you can see like you're just sitting there normally at your table, but then you can pull up a computer screen. So now imagine anytime you're doing a presentation, because you can do it with Keynote, what I'm talking about. Anytime you're doing a presentation, anytime you want to, I don't know, like theoretically in a private yoga lesson, even, you could like have your notes literally up in your face as you're seeing what's happening in front of you. And it could be prompting you and cueing you on what to say, like, let's use a silly example, which wouldn't be realistic because it would just be silly. But like, you could theoretically put this thing on, put the Bikram yoga dialogue on, and then teach perfect 100% verbatim Bikram yoga dialogue and teach the class. Like right now, today, you could do that. Now, why you would do that is silly, but like,
you mean
this changes it. Right. So yeah, the ridiculousness of the dialogue and Japanese ham sandwiches or whatever aside, it's like the point would be, this raises the bar of expectation on humans to humans now, because into am I breaking up? Oh no.
You said this raises the bar to, and then we heard humans, and then we heard humans, and we didn't get that whole.
It raises the bar between humans. When you can have supplemental help doing your work, there's no excuse to be shitty at it now.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, we talked a lot about last week with using, like you said, ChatGPT and stuff to help with like newsletters and emails and things of that nature, and making that part of it easier, and then just adding your own unique flavor. And if you do it enough, it starts to sort of learn your style in a way.
Yes.
You know, how your cadence, all that kind of stuff. So that is, I think, I think that, I've been using it. I use ChatGPT and you know, a lot now. More than I even did 3 months ago.
Yeah, and I think, well, if you look at the data of most downloaded apps, adoption and growth, like the speed and also improvement, the speed of just looking at one company, because there's multiple, just looking at OpenAI, like how fast that the adoption of that has grown and the quality of output that you get now versus just 6 months ago, it's so much better that we actually forget how bad it was.
Yeah, because I guess it's because now it's like anything, since more people are using it, more data is going in, that's the whole AI, right? It learns and there's more information going in, so therefore there's more information that can be put out.
Yeah. I suppose, my thought on this, with the idea of augmented reality, a more virtual reality setup, so it's sort of like a spatial change in when you're using computing stuff, and then also this AI stuff is like, you can look at the dystopian side of it, and there's no debate that there's a lot of risks and scary shit there. And you can look at the fun side of it too. It's like, now you can produce things you want to produce, and you can, if you have vision as an entrepreneur, your ability to bring that vision to life, whether we're talking about video or a newsletter or whatever, is easier than it's ever been. And to like really get the quality of what you really want it to be is faster and easier than it's ever been. So
I see it as,
if you embrace it in that way, it could be kind of cool.
Like it becomes serious. It's like a productivity tool to help you. I'm old enough to I say this all the time. If I had like Word and spell checker when I was going to school, I think my school experience would have been dramatically different, because I am such a shitty speller and I struggled with it so badly. And I just felt, just from a kid perspective, and because I was such a bad speller, I never thought I was a good writer. And those are two completely different things. But so just in terms of how education was, so I really feel that, when Word and all that stuff came out, it was like, wow, I don't have to be a good speller. I can use these productivity tools to make what I'm saying, to correct it, and not worry so much about getting the big red circle on my papers anymore, kind of thing. Can you tell I was scarred by that? I would get those papers with big red circles around them. I was scarred for life from that. But I'm just saying, in terms of, and we talk about it a lot, and I can see this as an entrepreneur, it's again leaning into technology to do things that maybe people used to do but don't need to do anymore, so that then you as an entrepreneur can still leverage into one thing that no AI or even virtual reality can compensate for, is that still human to human connection, and really dialing in. I can see this helping to dial in that human connection, and where we as entrepreneurs and yogapreneurs in our studios can have to make that client experience, when they are there in person, level it up even more. Because you're not spending all this time.
Yeah, all that happens from this, to your point, Terry. Sorry, my connection's shit, I guess.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. All that happens from this is the ability to be a very powerful communicator, and the ability to be charismatic, and the ability to be charming. Do you have a comment on that too in a second? Those become superpowers. That's all. Because no one can do it. I was at Whistler downhill mountain biking, and anyone, and I'm stereotyping here, but it is what it is, anyone that was younger than me, not younger than the millennial age bracket, if they're like passing you in a lineup or moving their bike around you or blocking you, they don't say excuse me, they don't say sorry, they literally, if they realize they've like blocked you or what, like cut in line or something, they just put their head down and move past.
Yeah.
Like no one can make, it's just the simple thing that we would have been taught as kids that I'm trying to teach my kids. Like if you step in front of somebody, you say excuse me.
Excuse me.
If someone says hello to you, you look up and you look at them in the face and say hello.
Hi.
Like it sounds ridiculous, but like that's already being lost. Where like it is going to be a superpower if you're able to make human to human connection in person without supplementation. People are going to look at you like you're fucking Superman.
And that is a little bit of a sad commentary on humanity, I have to say. But you're right. It's like it's just common, just kindness. Just like you said, saying hi to people, looking up from your phones, interacting with the people in front of you, right in front of you. Yeah, I think that's really, it's going to be fascinating to see how this continues to evolve and work in business.
It's reminding me
So-
of a comedian I just heard. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But
He was talking about how before smartphones, we were forced into mindfulness. Like I was on the bus and I didn't have my phone, so I watched the condensation drip. I was so mindful. And so going back to that, these kids these days don't really have, they're just.
I guess there's this whole movement now. I was reading about it, like on long plane flights and stuff, just looking at the back, not there were some, was it Jared
Oh,
Leto?
it was a challenge. Yeah.
It was a
that people are
challenge. Like I
doing.
think Jared Leto, the actor, was on like a 17-hour flight, and he just like he just no books, not even like a physical book, but no electronics, no watching, and just sitting there and not doing anything. And I laugh because that's how it was. That's why we did like car games. That's why we did like the license plate game. And that's why we would do like, my name is Adam. I come from Alabama and I sell apples. Do you guys know that game?
Yep.
And then the next
we just did a lot of road trip games.
Yeah, road trip. So that is kind of funny that all of that stuff, it kind of does come full circle. And I also read that there's a lot of is it the Gen Z? Is that the ones that are like born in like the last 10 plus years? That there is a movement to go back to like non-smartphones. I mean, they're making phones now that you can text and you can have like limited apps, like a Google Maps or something like that. But beyond that, it's like nothing. And with flip phones, with keys, because it's like getting away from the smartphones so that you're not always tethered to that little pocket computer.
Well, that's an interesting like call out, because I think the two things that are related to this are, one, tying together some of this augmented reality. You could call it hyper reality, where it, like, if you grow up in it, it seems more real than life. Like life seems dull versus this, because when you're in this like spatial situation, your brain doesn't really understand that it's not real.
Not real.
So the chemical response that your brain has, is like through the roof. And so it makes reality seem dull because you're not getting the same response, unless you start to practice real life meditation, mindfulness, yoga, etc. And or you slow things down and you start to make things more tangible, like the idea of clicking a button. We all know that when you click a button and it moves and it makes a noise and there's a feeling, that feels good to click the button, versus if you just touch a screen and nothing happens. It's why an iPhone spends so much effort that when you click it, the phone actually has a little like reaction to you clicking. That doesn't need to be there. That's there for us, because otherwise it's not satiating to click something. So that movement back to it is, it's interesting to hear about. And then by extension, when we talk about marketing, I've been reading a lot about this, because the millennial age bracket And the standard, therefore, marketing information that you hear these days is that, you should focus on an avatar, and that what you're selling is, you've all heard this, you're selling a lifestyle, right? As a brand, you're not selling a product, you're selling a lifestyle. That's not true anymore. And the reason it's not true is that in the older age bracket, we came up in the time, look at Lululemon. Like Lululemon sold being active. So you buy activewear because it's part of your identity that you're
Right.
active and wear activewear. So therefore you align with the brand. You're selling that lifestyle. But now the Gen Z age bracket, they're looking at this more like, the analogy is skins. Skins is the term for the different things in your video game, the different ways that you look. So they're like, oh, today I'm active Josh and I'm wearing Lululemon. And tomorrow I'm cowboy Josh and I'm literally wearing cowboy boots and a hat. And they're interchanging between these identities significantly, like literally all the time. So this will change the way business looks and marketing, therefore, because you're not selling just the one identity of I'm a yogi anymore.
Ah,
What you're selling is, this is a part of this larger picture of the complex, super unique, individualistic, fantastic person that you are, that gives you these benefits of value, such as mindfulness, flexibility, health, breath work, whatever else. And people who don't want to align as like, I'm a yogi and do that all the time, still want to participate because it's just something they do more temporarily.
yeah. That's interesting. So no more that you can have multiple identities, I guess is what you're saying.
It means, why do you have to identify as anything?
Oh, well, there's an interesting
Like
topic.
my whole life, I would have been the person who thought that. Well, I mean, I just mean, like, look, you're making fun of the beard, and I'm making fun of being up in the. No, you're not just making fun, but
I
like,
am making fun of the beard.
I don't have to be like, I'm a Canadian lumberjack. I got a beard. Like,
Right.
like I do this week, and next week I'm gonna wear a suit, and like, I don't have to be any one thing. You can't put me in a box, Terry.
No, you definitely, although, you know what, I would pay money to see you decked out in clean shaven, traditional banker suit, tie, penny loafers. I pay money for that. I would pay money to see you look like that with the whole 9 yards, tie clip, the the pen, all of that stuff. I bet you look pretty good. Or in a tux.
Well, when I retire and become a male stripper, that'll be my.
Oh God, that's hysterical.
Carol, when did you learn how to type?
We took a typing course in like 8th grade. So that was part of our coursework, I remember.
Yeah.
So and I always, my dad was an early adopter of computer systems, and he was always like, we had the Apple IIe and then he had the Macintosh. And so we were always around. I feel like I remember computers being around at a young age. So I felt very comfortable, but I did not have an actual computer to type things on until college. So I'm Gen X, I used a word processor in high school.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
how is Wheeler at typing?
Oh, he's been doing it since I don't know, 7, 8 years old. It's just a part of, yeah, his daily fast. He's really good.
Yeah.
So then I think about that too, that like, there's a certain age bracket that they can just type, but then how is Wheeler at writing cursive?
Well, I think he's an anomaly because he's always been interested in that from like first grade. He was interested in writing in cursive, and we were like, "Is that okay?" We're asking his teachers, like, can we teach him cursive?
They don't teach it anymore.
They don't.
No.
And I don't think he actually writes in it, but he is he had an interest for a while.
Although there are studies that show people retain information better if they're physically doing the writing of taking notes as
Yes.
to like typing them. They've done studies about that you retain the info because it's like you're hearing it, you're writing it, and it reinforces opposed to typing it. And I mean, there was this whole thing on again going around on the internet about if the Gen X, because it's always about Gen X now, if Gen X just wanted to take over the world, all they'd have to do is start writing in cursive and do away and just have maps. Right, because kids, they don't know how to use a map. They don't know how, they don't, it's like, what is this? What is this? Which I think is hysterical. Well,
Exactly.
I learned to type in high school. We had to take, it was an elective class. And here's the thing, we had, I still remember Miss Whitney was our typing teacher, and she wore a wig, but so, and then she would wear different wigs. She was a very beautiful woman, and she always forever would have a pencil stuck. She would like, instead of putting the pencil behind her ear, she would stick it between her wig and her scalp. So she'd always have pencils out. Anyway, but half the room every other week, half their class would use electric typewriters and the other half would be manual. Yeah. Because the school was slowly starting replaced, at least when I was, eventually I think they all went to electric, but I even learned to type on an old manual typewriter.
Well, so my point of the question though too is, and we asked like, how has this changed for business? It changes business because culture changes and we have to realize like what's normal for somebody, yeah. Right? So for example, typing, okay, so Wheeler's an anomaly and can write cursive. Arjuna can't write anything in cursive, maybe a little bit, but like he couldn't write a letter in it, And when I tried to show him, my hand cramped, which makes you realize I can't do it anymore either. But that's more a physical limitation. Yeah. But my younger daughter, Lux, she can't type. She's at the age where Arjuna could type. She can't type at all. And I was like, why can't you type? Like, is it just something you haven't learned yet? Is this really a learned skill? And it's because her interaction with technology is only technology that you don't require typing. There's no technology she uses in Google Classroom, on the iPad they use for school stuff or whatever else that requires her to have a keyboard. It's all app-based. And she's like, why would I type something when I can push this button and talk? And then it does it. So now the idea of like, this is more extreme, but the idea of like someone comes into your studio and you're like, oh, here's a computer, like fill out your stuff. And there's a whole huge long questionnaire that does not autofill and that people have to type on. That's not just annoying. That's like actually difficult for people because they're like, why the fuck would I have to do this? Versus everywhere else that they interact in their reality is auto-filled with biometrics to approve payments without any typing with voice prompt. So, I mean, part of this is the tech systems of boutique fitness have to catch up, but that's who's going to be in your business, who's in your business now, and who's going to be in your business in the next 5-10 years.
Interesting.
Brambot, speaking of tech.
I was just gonna say, speaking of tech.
Brambot is just charging through the roof now, I hear.
Yeah, so for those of you on MindBody that are using Brambot, you should have received an email from both MindBody and Brambot. Brambot has increased their prices. And I found out yesterday, one of my clients sent me her invoice. It was almost 3 times. Now, this is a studio that has multiple locations, so has a very big database, and they do charge, their tiers are based upon the number of contacts that they have. But even still, she went from paying like just over $300 a month to like over $800 a month at once, right? And that's a pretty substantial increase. And then, so they've substantially raised their prices. And then also they're terminating the API integration between MindBody and BrandBot. So those of you that are on MindBody that are using BrandBot, you need to decide what you're going to do. Whether you want to just go all in with MindBody and do Marketing Suite, whether you want to just go to a completely different software, whether you want to do like a Loyal Snap, a LoopSpark, a LensView. But in the video I posted on YSC, I said, I do something now because you want to be proactive about it, as opposed to all of a sudden you found your integration ends and now you're scrambling. So any automations you've got built in BrandBot, if you want them, I would go in, either email them to yourself or copy and put them in a Word doc or something. Decide what you're going to do, and then just start moving those automations over to whatever platform that you decide to go with. And then what I would suggest is start with the most important ones, like whatever your first month funnel is, get that one going, make it live in whatever thing, and then in BrandBot, nobody else is going to go into it, and then just let it kind of run for a month. You may have to keep both for a while, or you just terminate it, and so people aren't going to get all those emails. But you need to have a plan for what you're going to do. So
this might be for some people a time to look at switching systems altogether, switching off of a MindBody too.
That is there's that certainly is the case. I wouldn't be surprised. I know that Mariana Tech is going to have it because, BrandBot is owned by Studio by Explore, which is owned by Mariana Tech. And my understanding is Mariana Tech, if you want to switch from MindBody, they have a deal, whatever. But if you're going to do that, do some demos.
Yep. Well, this is a good example of where, there's two ways to go with tech platforms. You can go with the model where the platform is building everything in-house, so everything is like seamlessly integrated in, or you can go with the MindBody model where things are instead connected through API. And one is not better than the other necessarily, but it's starting to look more and more like everything built under one roof, because in the past that was a problem because it was too slow. Like that was the wellness living problem, is they refused to integrate with anything. So then you had to wait for them to develop stuff, and they ran their business incorrectly, in my opinion. So they couldn't develop fast enough for it to be really powerful. But that's not the problem anymore. The point being, now it might make sense to look at a platform that has everything under one Walla, and you have all your journeys written out in there. Like that's built in Walla. So the only way you lose that is you go off of Walla altogether.
Right.
So you're not at the mercy of, because then it's like right now you're at the mercy of BrandBot and at the mercy of Explore, their company, and at the mercy of MindBody, and at the mercy of how good the tech integration works. Like there's a lot of factors. So it's tricky.
Yeah. It's but again, don't wait. Make a decision, do it now, particularly if you do plan to like completely change softwares. I would start booking those demos, decide what you want to do, and make a plan moving forward, because you don't want to be like, oh, all of a sudden it's like the 5th of whatever and you're being cut off on the 6th, and then you're scrambling.
I'd like to add some flavor for because I think it's important in the yoga studio world to understand the bigger picture of what's happening. So, this is a good example of where in MindBody right now, they want everyone under one roof, mm-hmm. and they want to limit their potential liabilities. The liability being that because Explore Industries, TSG being their largest funder, bought BrandBot, BrandBot's integration with MindBody means a competitor has direct access through the API to the data that's in MindBody. So why would they want that? I'm actually surprised that this hasn't happened faster.
It's been 3 years since this. I'm totally surprised it's still there.
So then, of course, this is happening. So then, so they're probably kicking them out. But then the other detail is, behind the scenes, MindBody makes money in multiple ways. And this isn't just MindBody, but they're just the easy one to look at. They make money from the API call. So if I build a tech platform that connects to MindBody, every time my tech platform looks at MindBody's data and asks a question, for example, did Carol take a class this morning? It charges me money. And then for every single call like that. So what ends up happening for a platform like Brandbot is the expense for the platform to operate properly connected with MindBody goes through the roof. So when they're doing something like triple their prices, part of that, there's a pricing strategy to it, but part of that is because their margin is way tighter than it looks like because they're getting charged so much by MindBody actually. And then on top of all of this, MindBody is looking to go public again.
Yep.
That'll happen relatively soon. I think in the next year, probably.
They said 12, the press release said 12 to 18 months. So yeah.
Right. So you've got to consider what the motives are of a company. And to go public and to get a valuation properly, things have to look a certain way on paper. For example, you want to be cash flow positive and you have to look profitable. So this, in my mind, is probably a small related component where I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few moves in MindBody where they're going to increase API call prices or pick integrations out or whatever else to position themselves better because they're preparing for literally a sale.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's and believe it or not, there are still studios out there that are not using any software.
Yeah.
I know
Still
one,
exists.
I know one that still doesn't use software. So, I mean, you don't have to have it. I mean, certainly for years and years and years, studios and businesses in general did business without any type of technology, right? I actually could see a little bit of a movement going back that way.
Yeah, Carol, I know you and I have talked about it for a few years where it's like you could lean into the anti-tech movement.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, still, our studio was a long time tech-free in the room, and I know that can be controversial, to some people. Like,
I
can't
was like,
run my-
what?
Terry, you need to take off your Apple Watch for
I'm not
yoga.
thinking of my fitness.
But
I mean, there is something to be said for that. There's this great I mean, I don't go there a lot just simply because they don't take credit cards. And it's like, I don't carry cash. And they take checks, but like, who carries a check anymore? I mean, I write,
Well,
you know,
you're raising another good point around like payment processing. So
exactly. And
Canada,
that's why, I mean, I get it. It's like, and more businesses are starting. I went out to dinner at a restaurant. We weren't even a big party. And I looked at my bill, and they're adding like a 3% service fee.
Yeah.
And that's for credit cards. Because particularly rewards cards, I mean, I remember when I had I'd look at my merchant statement from TYSI, MindBody, and it would be like, holy smokes, the rewards card, you pay the highest fees for those, all those rewards that we get on a rewards card. And you guess who pays for that? It's not the credit card company, it's the merchants. So
yeah, in Canada, for example, no one will take American Express. They'll take anything, but it's a commonplace thing here on the payment terminal for them to say like no Amex.
Because they have the highest.
Yeah, and I think in Canada it's even extra high or something. They're like, yeah, we'll take any credit card, but not Amex. Like, it's not that they can't take it, it's that they just refuse to. What's interesting here, so Canada tends to be quite progressive with things like payment processing for some reason. And so the two things that I see here that are fascinating is one, cashless society. Like, no one carries cash, like you're saying. But not only does no one carry it here, there's a growing number of businesses, I would say 30%, that refuse to take cash. You can stand there with cash for your item and they will say no. And they would rather turn the business away than take the money, which is an interesting debate here because people are now debating, like, is that legal? This is legal federal tender. Like, I think you have to take it, but businesses just aren't doing it. So that's interesting.
Well,
But
I
then-
don't know, but are they required to take it? Because I know here in the state, there's a lot of, you can refuse to do business with anybody. So
Exactly. That's the way.
it's like
That's
I
the
choose not to
angle they
accept
have.
cash, just like you can choose not to accept credit cards. Yeah, I know. It's yeah, there's the local high schools right behind me, and I walk by all the time, and they say, like, at the concession stand, it's like, we are cashless. We do not accept cash, and this is at the high school.
Yeah.
Right? That for like they have like the snack bar for the games and stuff like that. So, that is an interesting thing too, not even taking cash.
Yeah.
I mean, you could really go, oh, gee, it's like we only accept cash and we don't have a computer.
Right.
But
Well,
then,
and that's Mexico. Like when we're in Mexico for the school year, 80% of businesses, small businesses there, cash only. If you pay with the credit card, the credit card fee, which is usually they say 5%, they like over index it. They also add another 16% on top because that's what the tax is, which tells you straight up that like it's because they're not paying tax on the cash that they're collecting normally. But I digress. That's a whole nother
well, that's
issue.
why
Whole nother
this
thing.
one studio that I referred to earlier, at least the original owner, I know that's why the studio doesn't take computers, because it doesn't have a computer, because if you don't have a computer and it's harder, it's easier to not claim all your cash, all your money.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Yeah.
plus, I don't know about you guys, Carol, and when I had my studio, like 95% of my revenue came from credit cards. I didn't take that much cash.
Yeah.
At all. I mean, it was like 95% of my revenue was from credit cards. So of course, then the IRS is absolutely going to know, because you got here in the States, it's called a 1099-K. The credit card companies say, this is how much, the Hot Yoga Factory brought in last year, and that damn well better be reflected on your income taxes, or then you have a problem. So, but yeah, it's just, there's there's benefits to only taking cash.
Well, so then here's the other flip side of that we're seeing here. The standard occurrence of self-checkout.
Yeah.
Like, so Tim Hortons, biggest coffee company in Canada, right? It's the Dunkin' Donuts of Canada. It's all of the new Tim Hortons in the Lower Mainland. Like, if you go to a Tim Hortons in Canada at 6 a.m, there's a fucking lineup a kilometer long that drives through. So how do they move faster? And they have really good employee training and etc. Think about the McDonald's model of how quickly you can sling a burger. But McDonald's is doing this now too, where like instead of going up and then ordering, they just have 3 huge kiosks. Yep. And you go up and you order your own stuff and you pay right there. So, or you can do online order on an app on your phone.
Yep.
Or pre-order. So, and in fact, that's so much easier to do and so much more efficient that it's like, it doesn't make sense to stand in line anymore and order.
Well, in fact, a lot of the Starbucks here in the States, they and with new stores and stuff, they don't even have, it's mobile order pickup and drive through. They don't have sit down anymore. Because I mean, I'm on my app, and like, I know exactly, I've talked about this before. It's like when I go on my walks, I know exactly which walk I'm going on. I even know the time of day. Like if I'm going in the morning, right? It's like, okay, I got to order 2 blocks earlier because I want that order to be, so all I have to do is walk in, pick it up and leave. Where before, I think back, I used to stand in line all the time, and now I'm like, hell, I'm not going to stand in line. Why would I stand in line?
Yeah. Yeah. So in a yoga studio, I guess my question becomes, you're right, it's like this split direction. You could go more anti-technology. You could be like, we will accept cash only. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could go that direction. Or you embrace this and you go the other way altogether. If it's culturally normal to order something yourself or to self-check in or to You know, you could build your whole studio around that concept. Maybe a huge retail section, or, I mean, just think of one single simple thing, which actually, by the way, there is one tech platform that I just demoed that does this. Imagine self-checkout for like mat and towel rentals and water.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Right? People come in and you know, you have your front desk and they're there and they need to pay attention to the people who are on their intro. They need to pay attention to new people and give the tour. But then you got like 3 members coming up and they're like, hey, I need 2 waters and a towel, or can I have an electrolyte? That stuff all just sits on the end of the desk and they just self-checkout. And that's it. There's one tech platform that I'm demoing right now that I'll do a little report on soon, that through their app, they allow that to happen. You can choose products for self-checkout and it auto runs off their credit card. So they can literally, like, in your store, just be like, beep, beep, water, and then just grab one.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of sort of did that with, because with my body, you could do account balances. And so we had, rather than going negative balance, it's like we would put, and my policy is that once you hit below, we automatically recharge their credit card. And so then all they would have to do is say, hey, I got it. And I just write it down. We just had a piece of paper. I mean, not totally efficient, but it was similar to that, so that we weren't having to deal with all these small transactions. We use the account balances that way. So, but I've known there are places that, and this is even old technology, where they would have like a self-check-in kiosk, or have that iPad mounted where people could just go up. And I definitely think the technology's gotten better, because even 5 years ago, it was so spotty that half the time someone was going to have to go over there anyway. But having said that, though, and going back to what we talked about earlier, and what we always talk about, like in the sales training and stuff like that, is we want to make it such a great customer experience. So then we have to balance, I think, if, going too far with technology, as opposed to making sure that we're still having those interactions. Because sometimes, like you said, Josh, to the point about the members and stuff like that, we still want to make sure we're having interaction with people. So that's where it becomes tricky, I think, is balancing, leveraging technology, but not sacrificing that connection that we have, because that is the one most powerful thing that can't be replicated in virtual, that can't be replicated in a VOD or a live stream task, is that you and I, as 2 humans, are interacting with each other eye to eye, face to face, and not in a screen. So I think we have to really fiercely protect that. And
I agree. Here would be the other angle, though, that I'm just considering, that because this is just the reality, right? When we're talking about a culture of people that don't interact the same way, like we're talking about, and in fact, that gives them anxiety if they're forced into too much interaction, for example. But he will avoid certain things because the cost of the social interaction is higher than the benefit of what he would get.
that's true.
Right? Like, it's when your kid's like, can you go up and ask them to give me another iced tea? And I'm like, no, you got to ask. I don't want an iced tea. Like, the stress of having to ask for the iced tea is enough that he would rather sacrifice getting the iced tea. I'm not saying no. I'm like, sure, you can have an iced tea. But like, so it's a little hard when we're talking about an adolescent, but that is a normal human interaction situation. And the social anxiety is like an extreme way to word that, but just the forced necessity of interaction is something that a larger proportion of participants of the yoga studio are trying
You're underwater, Josh. I think we lost Josh.
You may lose them, yeah.
He must be in a non-internet zone. Josh. Okay, well, that certainly was. Carol, what are your thoughts from your IT background until we get Josh back?
Oh, well,
How would
things
you do it? I mean, if you owned a studio today,
I, you were just saying how we don't want to go too far that other
From
direction.
that perspective, what about a studio where I come in and how about now? Oh,
Well, you were frozen there for quite a bit, and then you just popped back in, and now we can't even see you. And so Carol was talking. I was asking Carol a question. Oh, I think
I think he's
I don't.
maybe
Yeah.
gone.
I'm here.
There-
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm just not
Okay.
sure. Can
Okay.
you guys actually hear me?
Yeah. Now
Yes.
we can. But
Okay.
you were very silent for quite a while. So if you
I
want that, we
I
didn't.
know I could hear everything. It was torture. I was on such a good rant.
It was like you were just like this.
Yeah. At least I didn't pause, picking my nose or something.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, what I was saying was, there's a studio situation now, but in the future where it's actually part of your product experience to not force human interaction. The idea that I can self-serve most of the stuff. I show up at the studio and I don't have to fucking look at you, talk to you, nothing. I grab what I need, I go in and I just do my yoga class and I check myself in. People behave that way a little bit already. Like there is some theoretical benefit to that and desire for it.
There is, well, I was just going to say, there has been a bit of a shift because we've talked about this before. We talk a lot, we hear a lot with clients and we hear it a lot at the on-sites. It's really rare these days that people are showing. I mean, remember when you show up the studio, it'd be a line waiting for people to get into the studio to get their spot and all that. People really are now. They're just flying in 1 or 2 minutes before class starts, take the class, and they're flying out afterwards. So to your point, there is, and that might be where we have to shift as studio owners, is trying to figure out how to do that, like first visit flow and things like that. When people are coming in the final couple of minutes. And of course, as we know, ClassPass is the worst example. We hear that everywhere. Oh my God, ClassPassers, even though we say get here 10 minutes before, they're flying in, 1 minute, 2 minutes before class. And we can't have that first visit flow experience because there's not enough time. So perhaps we're going to have to get better at, and in fact, I'm sort of, I guess, beta or trying with this one client of mine, is we're shifting it to after class. We're making that strategic decision to because they do have so many people coming in so last minute that we're shifting it, the whole thing, to after class to see if that's going to help the situation, because they have such a high volume of first visits coming in. I mean, and too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. They have such a high volume of first visits coming in, but their retention sucks because they're just not able to handle. Although my suggestion, they tried for 3 weeks and then they shut it down, which again, okay. And I brought it up again the other night and well, our members complain. I'm like, okay, but you want to grow your membership. You got to, at such a high volume studio, they only have 15 minutes between classes. It's just not enough time.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that we're already at the moment where the mental shift, and then also we're moving towards this, is that, people aren't going to come, and 45 minutes early to get a tour and because they already know what your product is enough that they don't need to do that. And to get their spot in the room is still a thing. Like they still have those desires, but people are just busy and time crunched and behaving differently that way. So the question now is, how do you facilitate, a more seamless experience of being able to come in and participate? Like, how do you reduce that friction, but still do the things that are necessary to offer good customer service? So now, the interaction with clients is way more digitized. It's way more.
You're breaking up again, dude.
Fuck.
Yeah, now you're back. So I was just going to say one thing.
Now you're back.
Yeah, you're back. So talking about leaning in, how do we create that experience even better is, maybe the pick a spot. More and more, where not only can I sign up online, but I can pick my spot in the room and know that when I get there, I'm going to be in my favorite corner, whatever it is. So more and more softwares are offering that feature as a pick a spot. So if you're I mean, that could be part of that experience too. It's like, hey, and then that sort of does address, and I agree with you, Josh, the younger generations, they don't want interaction. Man, I can not only do it, I can come in, I can check in, I can do this, I can go in, I know exactly where I'm going. And I mean, that could be part of delivering a nice client experience, even for those folks who don't want to interact with you.
Yeah, or what I was saying before I cut out before was a lot of what we're doing in person moves to a more digital front. Like content, contextual content that's timed well matters. So the example being, you don't just send something like a welcome email now, where you're like, oh, welcome to the studio, yoga's good for you. Now that email is, hey, here's a tutorial on how, like, the etiquette of the studio and how to check yourself in and how to pick your spot and whatever. Like, it's a how-to guide how to do it.
How to move in the space, yeah.
Right. And so all of that stuff still happens, but where it happens and when it happens looks differently. And by extension, this kind of is fascinating because it reiterates the importance of good product.
Yeah.
Because there's like, the product is the whole experience that you offer, but now the majority of the time of that experience, and it's always been the case, but even more so, is physically in the yoga class with the yoga teacher. So now, like, the whole idea of like, I'm just going to let the teacher do whatever the heck they want in the class is insanity as a brand, because you're basically saying, like, I'm just going to let these 20 other people invent whatever my business is.
That's huge, because we've had numerous conversations about this on roundups in the last few months about what is your product and defining your product and making sure that that product is your teachers teaching that product. And, because that could create, that's the one thing you still really can control. And I go back to, did an onsite earlier this year where I happened at that onsite, I took four classes that week, and I was taking their signature flow class, right? That a lot of vinyasa studios will have. They'll have their signature flow class, like Terry's flow, the hot yoga flow or whatever it is. And I said to the owner, I said, is it supposed to be similar? She said, yes. And I said, well, not all four of those classes were very different. And I said, you have a product problem, my friend. And she said, yes, I know that. Because
Yep.
Each teacher was doing something different, even though they knew they weren't supposed to. So that's, I think, where we absolutely can control it and should be, and not to the extent we've talked about this with Bikram. Obviously, Bikram is the extreme example of that. However, there is something in the brilliance of people know what they're going to expect. Yes, we've talked about that. You can still deliver that type of experience, even with a vinyasa flow class, by defining the art and talking about the flow is basically the same regardless of who class you've taken. And based on everything you're saying now, it's becoming that's, like, to me, mission critical, even more so.
Well, it's mission critical because all this ties together to just go back to the simple, like, value. You don't have a definably defined product, which is you, that solves a problem for me or improves my life in a certain way definitively. And if it's not entertaining or fun, and or if I don't like it, there's no pricing model that's going to fix it for you. There's no sales process that's going to totally fix it for you. Those are things to, like, supplement. You have to have a product. We've talked about this a lot. I had a lunch with this on an on-site some time back too, where it's like, if you're really that good, if you really have the best teachers in town and the best classes, and it really changes people's lives and it's really so powerful, then you should be growing exponentially. Like, you should have abundance in all elements of your business First visit people coming in, retention, sales, all of it. So if that's not happening, how good can your product be? Right? If 50% of people in the average yoga studio don't come back after class 1, well, how good can that class be then? How compelling was that class? If they're like, yeah, I got my ass all the way here and did it, and then I just decided like, nah, 5 out of 10 people are in the nah category, how good can the product be? So product development and definition, they are mission critical.
And it's interesting you say that, because here's something, here's a thought, is we've accepted that 50% don't come back as the norm in our industry. Why are we it's like let's think about that. Why are we accepting that? Because that's the data that goes back for years and years and years. It's like we've always said, oh, in our industry, 50%, there's an average 50% of people don't come back. And we have sort of accepted that as that's the average. So why are we accepting that? And maybe that's something there's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well,
let's not accept that anymore.
The anti-business narratives that are so prevalent in the yoga industry, they impact what we accept. Like they have more influence on the yoga world than the yoga entrepreneurs want to admit.
Yeah.
Here's another example. People don't realize that like the average yoga studio that isn't large corporate chain, because those have different data points, but that's still the majority, only gross revenue is only between 150 and 250,000. Now, this is going to sound maybe a bit assholey, but seriously, in 2024, why even run a business if it only brings in $150,000 gross? Just close. Like, unless you're just like super wealthy and it's 100% just a fun hobby for you, cool, do that. But unless that's the case, that is insanity in Western culture that it would be that low. Because after all your expenses and taxes, like you've got nothing. You've literally bought yourself a job, and not even a good one.
Yeah.
So, that the anti-business narrative leads to even the acceptance of that.
Yeah.
Where that can be true, and then an owner who hasn't paid themselves in 6 years and is stressed out and has put their house on the line to pay for the build out of their studio or whatever else, would be like, I just don't know if I can ask my team to sell stuff at the desk because someone might be uncomfortable. What the fuck are we talking about?
Yeah.
Sorry, there's my rant for this morning.
Oh.
One of many. Carol's just sitting back. She's like, I'm just going to stay out of this. Like, I can't let Terry and Josh just go for it.
Well, what I was thinking was when we were talking about the product itself, again, it goes back to if you as a teacher, you have teachers who are charismatic, who are well articulated, can, communicate well, et cetera, like that again is going to be the superpower, right?
Yeah.
So it's in addition to obviously defining the product and keeping consistency, what's going to elevate your studio, I think, is people like that, and not necessarily the rock star teacher, the asshole, whatever, but just a good, solid person there in person to deliver that product is going to be really important.
Yes, and that's on board with what your processes are.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's that I think then even becomes more, again, mission critical is your hiring, your onboarding. And we've had multiple conversations about this in the last few roundups, is about leadership. And you're the one as the owner that is responsible for that. So we can't, it's like, if the monkeys are running the zoo, that's your problem. You need to solve for that. And if that means some of your popular teachers have to go because they think one way and you're like, no, then that's what you have to do. And you have to, I have a client that's somewhat in that phase right now, is they're pretty much in like a rebuilding phase because some of their teachers have left because they don't want to, I'm going to say it, just toe the line. They're not, they're not respectful of what the owner has trying to put in place. And why have someone on your team that is going counter to what you're doing?
Yeah.
And
here's a question.
I don't care if their classes are full and all that stuff. If they are not supporting what you're trying to do as a leader, then they should go. That's my rant.
I mean, I don't disagree. or at the very least, you have to take the gut check and be like, I must not be leading this person.
Right.
And you have to start grabbing those reins and actually lead them. And then you'll usually discover in attempting to do that whether or not they're going to make it with you or not.
Yeah.
My experience is, as soon as you start really taking ownership over product development, teacher development, and leadership on your team, the people who aren't a fit, you don't even have to do anything. They weed themselves out.
Yeah.
Because they're like this, they don't want to participate because they're not just left to their own devices anymore.
They just don't roll in, teach class, and leave and not have to. There's accountability. There's things they have to do. Oh, guess what? It's a real job.
Carol, to your
profession.
Carol, to your comment, it was making me think of, product development. And so then the simple question is, everyone says they have the best teachers, which is not true because everyone can't have the best teachers. So if you really do in your market want the best teachers, and define best as like they get the best results by having full classes and retention and sales, how do you get those people is the question. How do you get the best teachers?
Well, I mean, I think when you're hiring, you're looking for somebody that you can help mold and takes feedback well. I think that's part of it. And I don't know, I'd have to like ponder that a little bit more, but I think it really does have to do with the leadership too. So I can't say, I mean, I knew that not every single one of our teachers was a rock star, but I felt really that they were really solid, like because of the way that we did, that I helped train and lead them. I felt there was nobody I put on this schedule that I was like, ugh, like I could not do I couldn't do that as, the
Right.
studio owner, So if somebody's class was iffy or, we did some mock classes that it just wasn't there, I'm like, you're waiting until I can see that there's consistently a good, solid, strong class that you're teaching before I put you on the schedule. I'm not, I don't want to risk it. I mean, having even one class of 20 people where the teaching is shit could really turn people off one time.
I don't know if you guys ever had to do this, but I actually had to take over a class with a new teacher, was not ready. And I was just like, I just went up to her at, I think it was standing separate legs, stretching Bikram. It's somewhere in the stand. And I just went up to her and I just said, and she knew it. She was really struggling. And I just said, this isn't working. And I just took over the class. And afterwards, a couple of students says, oh, thank you, Terry. Right. But the other thing I want to say, where you were saying that, Carol, about the gut check and the hiring, is there's another narrative that we hear a lot, or I hear a lot in the industry. And this just really kind of infuriates me, and goes to that, how do you build a team, is, oh, this isn't their full-time job. This isn't, it's like, why do we accept that? Why do we say, oh, granted, there are not a lot of yoga teachers that do it 100% full-time, right?
Right.
However, that doesn't mean, even though I'm teaching only 2 or 3 classes a week, why do we give them the out saying, oh, well, this isn't their real job. I can't expect this of them because this isn't their real job. Fucking A, it is a job.
Well, what's a real job?
But exactly. So it's like, if we accept that, if that is our mindset, I can't ask people to do these things. I'm afraid to do these things because this isn't their real job. If someone really is a committed yoga teacher, really is part of your team, doesn't matter whether teaching 1 class, 2 class, 3, or 13 classes a week. You're looking for that personality that wants to be there and treats it as a professional job, regardless of how many classes they teach. And I think we sort of give that out because, oh, well, they're a mom, or they're an accountant, or they're this, or they're that. This isn't their real job. Well, then don't have them on your schedule. If they don't treat it as important and what they're doing as important to the business, then shame on you.
Well, yeah, maybe the expectation isn't that they like are a super tech whiz on your system or something, because you don't need them to be. But in terms of like being a professional and teaching a good yoga class, the full-time job thing makes no sense to me at all. That comment doesn't make sense in any context. This is, in my opinion, a yoga comment, a yoga business comment that's quirky.
Yep.
That is like, because it's not your full-time job by choice, then my expectations of your performance should go down.
Exactly.
What other scenario would that be the case? I can't think of any other reality where you would say that.
It's
I'm
just,
trying to think of an analogy, but like you don't even need to make one. It's every other. It just doesn't make sense.
it's the one of
Yeah.
the, again, it's a quirky thing about our industry is that we sort of accept that they're
Hmm.
doing us a favor by teaching. And if
Right.
that's what you feel, then there's a mindset shift that needs to happen there.
Well,
And
from what you were saying and what Carol, what you were saying with the hirings, I think that's brilliant. Like right out of the gate, know what you're looking for.
yeah,
I was thinking the other side of the same coin is what you pay them and how you pay them. So I feel like one is, like, to sum up what you were saying, like one is like hiring the right person, but it's the next step is developing them. Like it's not, you need to have a development system and a mentorship system and to help them get better, to get better results system in place, because that is something that's within your control in your business. So how do you get the best teachers? Like you develop the best teachers, or you hire the best teachers based on the results, in which case you're going to pay for it. And the data's fascinating, because what we see across multiple markets, and I did test this across like a little spot test on some studios. If you pay on average 20% is the metric. If you're paying 20% higher than the average for the same job in your market, then you get the A players. So the difference between like a B player and an A player is a 20% difference. But the productivity or the output of an A player to a B player is like double. So if you look at it that way, it's a deal. If I'm a yoga teacher and I fill 50 people in my class 4 days a week, my retention's through the roof, and Terry only gets 25 and retention is mediocre, and I cost 20% more, I don't cost anything. Like your margin on me is way better than it would be on Terry. So paying me 20% more is easy.
here's a thought. I just made this note as you were said that, and to Carol, to your point with onboarding and hiring. Now, obviously, they're brand new teachers, they're not going to have this. But what if during the interview process you ask the question, so tell me, I hear you've been, you've been teaching yoga for a while. What is your standard retention rate for your classes? What is your average fill rate for your classes? What if we started asking those questions?
Yeah.
Yoga teachers, that would be super, because I guarantee you most of them they're going to be like, what?
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's important. A lot of times yoga studio owners, and I have some that are changing this, is that's why I think is share the data with them and say, this is our average studio fill rate. You're here. What can we do to get you to our average studio fill rate? Right? Or
Yeah.
Carol, you are crushing it. We're so excited here. We're going to pay you more. Whatever it is, it's like there's also this narrative is that we can't share their performance with them because we're going to hurt their feelings. I mean, in any other, I guess another thing, Josh, in any other industry, where is that the norm?
Yeah, performance is a standard
It's
standard conversation.
A standard conversation, a metric on how you're paid, compensated, and all that kind of stuff. I was also going to say, and if you as the owner, I keep looking because I have a call in 5 minutes. You as the owner, if that's not something that you want to do in terms of leading and your teachers, then you better hire someone to do it for you and work with that person, which is what I did. Because it's like, I didn't want to do that, but I hired someone who did, and was one of the best decisions I made, was to have someone that was responsible for that we communicated. And then she took care of the mentorship and the development, and we had a plan for that. So yes.
Yeah, I'm helping build a studio in Sayulita, little Easter egg there for you. I'll tell you guys about it sometime in the near future. But in that, we're trying to hire a manager to run it for the person who's building the physical building. We actually built the building itself. So long story short, I interviewed someone and we asked exactly this question. We asked it in a different way, though. We basically said, like, are you a good studio manager and are you a good yoga teacher? And to which, because how they answer that tells a lot. They're like, well, yeah, of course I am. I'm a great yoga teacher, whatever. And then we just followed up and said, okay, why? Why are you a good teacher? And then they answer that, and we say, like, what proof do you have that you're a good teacher? And so that's where it stops. And it's not to try to back them into a corner, but it's to actually see in the interview, like, how do you react to this type of viewpoint? Because right from the gate, they're like, if someone can admit, and they're like, well, I guess I don't really have proof. I just feel like I'm good. And, or if they're like, I don't know, my class is always full. I'm always sold out. Like, that would show something, as opposed to making them disgruntled or something like that. So it was a fascinating questioning line to get to practice, because 2 or 3 people, like, the reactions were very different asking these questions, and how equipped people were to answer was very different. And it was more telling than I anticipated, actually.
Well, I got to bounce because I do have to get ready for my call in 3 minutes. So it's been great hanging out with you guys. Josh, it's good to have you back. We've missed you. And then can we talk about really quick Reddit read? Are we gonna unveil that, or can we drop a Easter egg about that?
Easter egg, yeah, upcoming new YC show.
It's gonna
We're
be
still figuring out the name.
Yeah, so it's going to be very fun. It's going to be very interesting. We're actually going to have our debut this afternoon. So if you're around, it's going to be 3 p.m. Central Time, right? Is that what it is? 3 p.m. Central?
Yep, something like that.
So we'll post the link in the YC if you want to be in. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's going to be 3:30 p.m. Central. Stay tuned for that. I really do got to bounce. Good to see you guys. Bye. Oh wait. I gotta make somebody a host.
No, sorry, we're done. We're done.
Okay, go do some yoga.
Guys.
If you have some time this afternoon, 3:30 p.m., tune in. We'll post the link in the YC. There's still room at the summit. If you want to really get your business going the right direction, sign up for the summit. And we're here to help you. Post your comments. Let us know how we can help you. What do you think about all this stuff we talked about today? Are you using AI? Are you monitoring your teachers? What about your hiring? Do you have a definition for your product? Let's chat about it.